This is Secrets Unlocked, breaking down the basics of ChatGPT. All right, so housekeeping items. We're so happy you're joining us today. This is a really great topic for us to be discussing. First things first, we will be sending this deck out following the webinar. So if you see something that interests you and you want to hold on to it, you'll be able to access this as well. And next, we have our questions. So feel free to ask questions. This is going to be a really jam-packed webinar with lots of information. So there's a chat you can type your questions in if you want to get them out. We'll also have Q&A time at the end, but do just make sure everybody's on mute and we can go on with the presentation. Next, we invite you all to join our private
Recording
LinkedIn,
in progress.
Our private LinkedIn group for one-person marketing teams with tips on AI and GPT following this webinar. So we will be sending out a survey following this webinar, as well as some useful links that can help you move forward. We want to know how you like it. And then the agenda. So first things first, we're going to start with our intro to GPT and large language models. Next, we'll be going into AI in practice, then prompt engineering, and lastly, what's next? And our two speakers. So joining us today is Dawn Clark, our Senior Director of Agency Services here at Ironmark, as well as Lynn Kingsley, our VP of Marketing and Strategic Services. They have been following the growth of AI and GPT since the very beginning. So we couldn't have asked for better experts to talk to us today about this matter. And so much has changed that we're really excited to get started. So without further ado, on to Lynn.
Great. Thank you, Victoria. Yes, I'm Lynn Kingsley. I'm the VP of Marketing and Strategic Services here at Ironmark. And this is a great community. This has been a group, the amount of people that have registered for this. Congratulate yourself for being here because you are curious and you're looking at the next trend of trends and what's happening in marketing and communications, HR operations. It all matters. So thanks for being here. This is our most popular webinar to date with about 150 people registered. So we'll be recording this as well. So we'll have it. And again, thanks for being here. You all are part of the Ironmark community. And here at Ironmark, we are your partner in marketing and communications, logistics, marketing, supply chain, all of the things. So definitely go to our website at ironmarkusa.com if you don't know much about us. But we have our contact information here. So let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about the one thing that everyone cannot seem to stop talking about, which is a technology service and application called ChatGPT, its GPT model, and other large language models. Maybe you've heard of it. It's literally been in the news at every possible turn. From how it's used in business and graphic design, marketing, education, real estate. It's kind of impossible to not have heard about it, and the good, the bad, the ugly, and it's kind of freaking people out. And partially because people don't know enough about it. So that's why you're here. So again, congrats for being here because you are brave and facing it, and let's just get into it. Partially, people are freaked out about it because of the early adoption. In November of 2022, when OpenAI first came out with ChatGPT, it was actually the interface that made adoption possible. The large language models themselves had already been around for years, and it was the chat interface that came out in late 2022 that made it so easy for people to access these underlying models that had been around for years, but only accessible to developers and programmers. Prior to that, it was, that's all. Those are the only people who could really access it. So it really became publicly available. And you can see here, it had a lot of early adoption. Now, this is the graph showing how long it took for these apps to hit 100 million monthly users. And some people might be saying, well, hang on, Threads just came out last week, last week. And but actually these are all kind of new apps. Threads leveraged their users over on Instagram. It was more of a migration. So ChatGPT is still the champion here. Now, GPT, so let's just kind of dive in. GPT is a language model developed by OpenAI that uses artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms to generate human-like responses to text prompts. The model has been trained on a massive data set of text and has learned to generate responses that are similar to how humans would respond in context, which is really alarming to people. The model's trained on a machine learning algorithm, which is like a neural network. We're going to dive in a little bit technical just to understand how the models are built. But it's essentially, it's designed to process a sequential text. And that's what makes it have its human-like qualities. And it's really revolutionized the field of natural language processing. So it assists in writing things like articles and emails, and it's really, really great at synthesizing text. It's good at creating text, but it requires prompts, which we're going to get into how you engineer those prompts. So what is a large language model? How does it work? Because for a lot of people, it comes across as a little bit of magic. And it's definitely not magic. There's nothing about machine learning or artificial intelligence that is magic. It's math. So unfortunately, if you got into marketing or communications or media to get out of math, I have some bad news for you. We're here. But computers are good at math. Actually, computers can't read, they can't understand. So the large language models are actually the latest evolution in natural language processing, which what NLP does is it aims to teach computers how to work with words by turning it into math. So it's all statistics and proximity probability. These large language models are based on one principle written by the British linguist, John Rupert Firth. You shall know a word by the company it keeps. So remember that. You shall know a word by the company it keeps. Because remember, computers can't read. They can only process numbers. So this concept identifies the likelihood of the words being close together to identify their intention or meaning. So we know this to be true, right? Like we know context even as humans, you know a word by the company it keeps. And we see this in our everyday lives, right? So if I were to say to you, his bark is worse than his bite, you would have some sense that I am talking about a canine, some sort of dog, right? But so, it's about all of the other words around it. If I said to you, the bark on the palm tree is rough, you would know I'm no longer talking about a puppy. So these are the things we have to think about when this is how the large language models are built. The underlying model of GPT called Instruct GPT, which in itself is a sister to the GPT model, is built on this exact concept. So if you think the text is kind of transformed, the proximity probability is transformed into math. And it's almost like one big spreadsheet. So what OpenAI did is this is how this and other large language models are built. It starts with a massive amount of text, and OpenAI scraped the public web for billions of parameters. And this huge body of text, if you think about one sentence, and you were to put that one sentence into the x-axis of a spreadsheet, and the same sentence in the y-axis, and then you created probability weights to each of those of what is the likelihood that these two words are next to each other. This is the information that a computer can understand to evaluate the likelihood that two words are going to be together. That's a process called embedding. Encoding, positional encoding, is about the order of words. We don't say rough is the bark on a palm tree. So it also, this is again giving these models the best likelihood of getting of sounding like human. The order matters. That's called positional encoding, and so it gives weight to certain the order of words. Sorry, I was a little late on my slides there. It also has an attention span. So the attention window is how the text model can be considered all at once. So if, this is where we'll get into the prompt engineering part of it. So, so when you're composing your prompts, you have to cut it. The system can only understand like about a page at a time. So you have to be able to remind the prompts as to where you are in your when formulating these prompts. So when you think about ChatGPT and large language models, it's helpful to see how they're built and what's important. Remember that phrase, you shall know a word by the company it keeps. You have to feed the model information in order for it to get the best response out of it. Words matter. ChatGPT and these large language models are also better at editing and revising and synthesizing text. They're good, like they said, they're good at creating text, but they're better at synthesizing or editing. Large language models are, again, probability-based guesses. So the more relevant words that you can give it, it's like food for them. They understand it. They're able to get more information. They're not constantly, these language models are not constantly searching the web. At least GPT certainly isn't anymore. They had a beta that had a search function in it. It's down now. So it really only has information, large amounts of information from around the end of 2021. Closing out this section, understanding the model's workings really help us use it more effectively and understand the model's strengths and its limitations. It's definitely not perfect. So, when you're writing code, it helps you write code. It's about 98% accurate, but it won't run. The code won't run unless it's 100% accurate. So we still need humans to, and we'll go through this a little bit more moving forward. To understand a little bit more about the models versus the interface. If you think the model is like the engine of a car, you can have a different steering wheel, a different color of the car, different alloy wheels, but the engine is the model, and the interface is all of those other things that are in the car. How you enter the car, the door, how it feels when you drive it. Those are the interfaces. So the models are things like GPT 3.5 Turbo, GPT-4, Palm, Llama. These are the models that I was describing earlier with the probability-based architectures. And then the interfaces are things like ChatGPT, Bing, and Bard. And these are the way kind of we enter and what we see, how we use it, how it feels to use, how easy it is to use. It's also important to think about the two different architectures of these large language models. There's transformers, which process sequential data, so in parallel. So that's like your GPT model. A diffusion model is more the image-based models. So what that does is it actually throws everything in the kitchen sink all at once, but then it takes away items that aren't relevant based on the prompts that it's given. So you'll see things like Midjourney or Bing Image Creator. So if you were to try to example of a diffusion model, if you were to ask it for Bing Image Creator for two monkeys trying to solve a Rubik's Cube, it's going to do its best. It's going to give you a couple options, and then it'll take it from there, and then you can keep revising and taking things away. It'll ask you to pick one, and then give it more prompts so it can get a better guess as to what it's doing. It throws everything at you. So to get started, I'm not sure who already has a ChatGPT account. Hopefully you do. Really easy to set up. you go to chat.openai.com. It'll ask you to sign up. You create your account, and then off you go. This is just a little walkthrough of the platform itself. This where it says send a message. This is where you can input your prompts. So you can ask it things to do things, and we'll go through exactly how to set up your prompts in a few. But it on the side here, it gives you, here's where your account is. You can upgrade if you want to go to GPT Plus. It's about $20 a month right now. It gives you access to the betas. And then you can also see the history of your chat. So if you're asking, putting in an initial prompt, and then you ask it to refine a little bit further, it'll save all that in there for you, so you don't have to go back again. And this is a great way of testing the interface, because once you get something that works, you want to try to use it over and over again. So it's we'll talk about developing a prompt library, but at least you have your history in there. Your account here, you can upgrade to Plus. And this is a Bing. Bing also has an interface that actually leverages the GPT 3.5 Turbo platform, but it combines with internet search. So we have found that ChatGPT is still in our testing kind of the winner in artificial intelligence and that interface. But if you need more current information, Bing is a great way to go. You have to use the Microsoft Edge browser, and you can use your Microsoft Office login to do so. And certainly, if you're looking at image search, some of the image generators are a little bit more complicated to use. We found Bing Image Creator is the best one to use. And again, you have to use the Microsoft Edge browser. And now I'll introduce my colleague, Don.
Thank you, Lynn. That was great. All right, so I'm going to jump into some best practices and use cases for your day-to-day workflow. Tried to come up with some ideas here that are pretty universal across industries and across job functions. Best practices, just a few things right out of the gate to always keep in mind when you're using ChatGPT. Number one is fact check and proofread everything. Treat it as your assistant, and your assistant is going to need your help. It's a co-pilot. So just always double check everything, especially fact checking if you're using ChatGPT. We'll talk about that in a minute. Never enter any sensitive information. It is a third-party service, and that data that you're putting in there may be stored for future AI training purposes. There was a pretty well-publicized issue earlier this year where some Samsung employees were using ChatGPT to refine confidential source code, and that confidential source code was essentially leaked to this third-party service. So just be careful about what you're putting in there. And the last one is to understand, as you're using this tool, this is really important to get that it's a dialogue. It's not like a search engine where you type in the result, and if you don't get it right, you type it in again and change a word and hope and see what it comes back with instead. You're going to follow up with more and more questions, refine what it is you've asked it about previously. It has a limited memory capacity, but it can rework responses that it gives you. You can ask for more details on the answers. So just always keep that in mind, that it's a dialogue back and forth, and you can keep refining based on what you've asked it previously. Talking about fact check, this is important to understand. So plugins have introduced some limited capabilities with ChatGPT to actually pull in data sets from the internet and other databases of information. But as a rule, GPT itself, it's not live checking the internet. It's trained on a data set that ended in September of 2021. So this is an example where if you ask it, when did King Charles get coronated? This is what it's going to say. As of my knowledge, he hasn't been coronated. And the reason is that that happened after September 2021. So just keep that in mind. The number one thing that we found it to be most useful for is analyzing and summarizing text. It's incredibly powerful at this. So think about things like this. One of my favorite uses for it is how many of us are sitting in a meeting where we're just frantically typing everything that comes to mind and trying to keep track of everything we're saying, and then we'll organize it later. You can take your entire meeting notes, drop it into ChatGPT and say, please pull out all the action items and assignees from this set of meeting notes and make a list of action items. It will pull that out and say, number one, Victoria's got to make sure this recording gets posted on the website. Number two, Lynn has to send a follow-up to the employees. It's probably the number one thing that I use it for on a regular basis. Additional stuff with content, proofreading, grammar, and writing check. It's very powerful at this. You've probably already seen some AI with Grammarly that does similar things with proofreading, grammar checks. Translation, obviously, is a good one. Explaining difficult concepts and reformatting text to fit a different medium. So one of the things it's really good at is taking a piece of information and saying, all right, now explain this as if I was talking to a fifth grader. It can then turn that into a simpler form of what you're looking for. Same thing with different mediums. You might have a blog post that you want to turn into a short email. You can give it those instructions, provide it the blog post, tell it the audience, tell it the tone, tell it the format, even tell it the goal of what you're trying to communicate. This is just a quick example that we used internally to send, almost as a joke, to send one of our employees a thank you for some work she'd been doing with our project management tool. Little tasks like this, just as a way to start to get the ball rolling. I mean, how many times do you find yourself staring at a blank page? You just got to get it started. Think about it like that. It's a great co-pilot for things like this. Brainstorming. So in essence, what is brainstorming? It's getting a bunch of brains together in a room to bounce ideas off of each other, because you doing it by yourself is not always enough. You just add that conversation and all of a sudden it sparks new ideas. Use ChatGPT as a way to bounce these ideas off of things. Give me creative ideas for employee gifts on their birthday. Give me a list of fantasy football names. You can ask it follow-up questions. You can ask it, based on this list, tweak it, constantly refine, tweak based on what it's come back with. And again, always include things like the audience, the medium, so that it can be more specific with what it delivers. Spreadsheet formulas. This is another really useful one. And we've got the instructions written out here. So if you want to download the deck to follow up on this afterwards. But basically, if you open Excel or Sheets and ChatGPT in a separate window, you can ask it very clearly what you want it to do. You don't have to actually link it to the sheets themselves, but you can tell it what column the formula will be going in, and it will generate that for you. And then obviously you want to confirm that it's working before you populate it across the whole spreadsheet. It can also debug or reformat code. Things like finding the error in a code. You can say basically, this isn't working, tell me why. Drop it in and it may be able to understand what the issue is. Stripping out the styling in HTML. There's a number of different uses just for code. And in fact, there's a whole subset of plugins that developers can use this for. Professional development. This is really fascinating to me because it's where it goes kind of to the next level, and you can really personalize it with what you're trying to accomplish. So as an example here, let's say I want to learn more about web development. I can ask it to analyze advice from the top consultants, Provide me with a list of the most important lessons and tell me who is responsible for that information. And asking that last little question there is really key, because you want to be able to understand where it's getting this from. And especially with subjective things like the best or the top, this is what it responded to me with. It said, remember, top consultants can vary depending on the context, but these experts have been widely recognized. And then it lists out exactly who they are, what they do, and why that little piece of information it's giving me is useful. Asking those clarifying questions, you can even take it to the next level. And if you're trying to learn something, you can ask it to test you. It'll feed you a list of questions, analyze your results, and then identify gaps in your incorrect responses and provide you with the correct responses. Okay, so Lynn's going to take it away with prompt engineering.
Just trying to find the unmute button. Great, thanks, Don. That was great. So I'm going to run through how to set up your prompts, because what the use cases that Don showed are so helpful, and sometimes it can give you the information you need to then use as a first draft and keep it moving forward. But there's a new skill that's kind of coming to the fore, which is prompt engineering, and it's getting the models all of the possible, everything that they possibly need to create a most full, relevant, and helpful answer or task completion based on your input. So a prompt is the text that you're putting into ChatGPT in order to generate the response that you're hoping for. Remember I told you about the engine in the car? Each model has a different way that it needs to get information. So what I'm about to walk through is the GPT 3.5 Turbo and the GPT-4, how it works best in a very structured input that begins with a role, statement, background, and then action. I hope you like my little cartoons as well. We love these. The Marketunist this is giving them a whole new level of stuff to talk about, of material. Okay, prompt structure. So you want to start each prompt. If you're asking for a significant task, the way to get the best outputs from ChatGPT is to structure your prompts as such. You're going to give the system a role. You are acting as an expert in such and such. You're giving it language. Remember, you know a word by the company it keeps. You want to give it as many words as it could possibly, as you possibly can, to make the output as rich as possible. So you're giving it a role. You're telling it what it knows. You're giving it this information, keywords, phrases, jargon. Be as specific as you can here. Again, the more you give, the more you get. Give it a task. So tell it exactly what it needs to do. This is the directive. So are you writing? Are you summarizing? Are you reading this article and telling me what it means and in 3 bullet points? Give the model, it needs clear direction. And then give it some background. So this is where a library of prompts is really helpful for an organization. And if you're in a marketing department, beginning to develop that library of prompts will be incredibly useful for the rest of the organization to be able to use this tool and not have to recreate the wheel every time. Sometimes this background has enough words. It gives these models work a little bit like like search engine optimization. It needs as much words around it as it possibly can. And then remember the attention window. These models only can handle about a page of text at a time. So you might need to remind it what you're asking for. So we like to recommend the second statement of that same task at the end to remind it what you need. And then here's where you can give it some more context, like give it a length, give it, I only want a short email, or I only need, bullet points for a speech, and give it a tone. So this is where you can do that. So I put some examples in here. I'm going to run through this pretty quickly, but I wanted to show you some great use cases that can be really helpful. System role. You act as the marketing director for a mechanical engineering and HVAC company. You have expertise in B2B marketing, sales enablement tools, conferences, trade shows. You see what I'm doing there? I'm giving it a lot of words that it can go like do its probability stuff that it does and come back with a really helpful response. A task statement. Your company is growing, so your task is to write a job posting for a marketing associate. And then giving it a little bit of information there, whose responsibilities include social media management, working with your marketing agency, editing copy, great communication skills. And then this is the background information that's kind of proprietary to each company. So if you could start developing this background, that could be used time and again by other members of your staff or other members of your team, that will save everybody a lot of time. So if I was writing a job posting here, I'd give it some background on the company, the benefits, the diversity, equity, inclusion statements, the role requirements, and then I'm refining my statement. So remember, write the post, and then I'm giving it some tone in a professional, helpful, and welcoming way. Keep it short, clear calls to action, that kind of thing. And it comes out with a pretty decent result. Now, it is, I will say 100% of the time when I'm leveraging ChatGPT, I never just copy and paste it. It always needs refinement, always. So that's where the human element, we truly at Ironmark truly believe in human-led AI. So it's a draft. It's something to start. It, like Don said, it's something that like take you out of that blank screen with a blinking cursor. So it gives you some good, and then, you're also like, oh, that's not right. Let me change it. And it gives you that kind of momentum to keep that moving. So always refine. So this next one, I'll give you an example of some refinements. So we use this as an example. We don't necessarily use ChatGPT to write emails, but it is a great example to show you kind of how you could, as a marketer, maybe help enable your sales team to get some information out. So you will act as a sales representative for Ironmark, using us as an example. You have expertise in the commercial print industry, web to print software, online ordering portals for branded merchandise, and print collateral. So again, giving it some of that awesome, it's like fuel for these engines, is the words and the jargon that we use. Your first task is to write an introduction email to a new prospect. Then again, that background information about Ironmark, background information about the products itself, and then refining that statement, restating the statement, write the email in a friendly, helpful, yet persuasive tone. So reminding the system what you're asking it to do. So the first draft comes out and it's really heavy. So I ask it, you know what? Shorten it, make it more readable, make it more friendly. And then it shortens it. But then I talk to it again and say, not quite. Use bullet points. Jane's busy. She doesn't want to be reading paragraphs and paragraphs of text. So I'm in the tool still. I'm telling it what to do. I'm telling it to refine it. And remember, it has that memory. So it can take what you've given it already and refine it. It could tell you, you could ask it to write it in the tone of Jerry Seinfeld and it would do it. But then I take the email, and rather than copy paste it, I take the best of all of the different answers that I got. It gives me that ability to get out of my own head and maybe use some language that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of, and to create this email. So it's never just a copy paste. Pricing tables and calculation. The system is awesome at this. So if you ever get prices for things and then you want to add quantities to them and you need to put it in a table that works, and then refine that. This is a great way to leverage the tool. So if you can see, I put a prompt in here about branded merchandise and pricing. So if I have the system role, I have the task statement, I have some background information. Now I'm asking it to write a cost table. So this feels like magic to me because I spend a lot of time doing these kinds of things. And for it to just come out with it, make it look nice. I mean, again, I'd never copy paste this and send it to anybody. I would copy paste it and edit the heck out of it. But I've got my nice thing. And, it's always good to check its work. Again, if you think it's probably 90 to 100% accurate, you never want to, but look at that way that looks. That's not even in any sort of like spreadsheet or anything. I didn't have to do any formulas. Generating ideas, where you're the chair of the social committee and you are in charge of planning employee events. So create a list of events by month, make it thematic. And it does it. It's pretty good. I give this like I used to say a B plus. I'm starting to give it an A minus because remember, it's learning more as we go. So like even those, everybody using the tool, think about that millions and millions and millions of times, it's learning more constantly. There's no major update yet. We're still looking at September 20th to 21 as the amount of data that's been input, but it's learning all the time. So remember, this is your prompt structure. We'll send this out. But if you want, the best chance of ChatGPT giving you an awesome answer first time, this is the way to refine your prompts. And definitely think through prompt libraries in your organization. So if you're in charge, if you're the one who's at this webinar and you're the forward thinking one and you're like, guys, we got to get on board with this, begin building a prompt library. Things like the background on the company, background on all of your products, all of your services. Keep that organized and be able to disseminate it across your organization so that people can just copy paste that and stick it into the background section of their prompts into ChatGPT.
Okay. Yeah, and so thinking about what comes next, one of the things, still muted. ChatGPT can't solve that one for us, guys.
That was my fault. Sorry, Don.
So thinking about what comes next, one of the things we've been talking about a lot at Ironmark is, just the fact that right now this is moving so fast that the experts in this field are the people on this call right now, the people that want to learn about it and see where it goes next, because I can guarantee you that where it is 6 months from now is going to be different than where it is today. So, I mean, the number one thing really is just to not be scared of it, jump in and start using it. Specifically with ChatGPT, here's some of the big changes that have already happened and some that are coming down the pike. Plugins have really changed the game. We talked earlier about how it's kind of this closed model that only works with a set of information that was cut off in 2021. Some of these plugins are introducing ways to bring in additional information in, and that may be the database that particular plugin uses, or what Lynn talked about earlier was that at one point they had a plugin that used Bing and actually connected to the internet. That was disabled on July 3rd. And the reason that they disabled it was basically that they were finding that users were accessing information behind paywalls. So, the New York Times charges $20 a month to be a member, and ChatGPT was finding a way to access that information. That's what they cited as the reason they took that plugin down. But the important thing to understand is that all of a sudden, all these other companies are connecting via plugins and bringing in new data sets and new ways to use the tool. Some of the top plugins I would recommend you start looking at right away. Prompt Perfect is a plugin that essentially will take your request and try to format it to the best possible way to interact with ChatGPT. So a lot of that prompt engineering that Lynn just walked us through, this can really help you perfect that. Zapier, if you've used Zapier for anything else, you'll kind of know what this is for. Essentially, Zapier is the middleman that connects thousands of different apps. You can use this in ChatGPT to connect it to other apps. So as an example, I connected it to my Outlook. You have to go through the whole verification process, but then you can instruct ChatGPT not just to draft an email, but to put that email in Outlook and send it. And you can, through Zapier, provide a whole bunch of different parameters about how that will work. Show Me is another really cool one. It can generate simple diagrams based on the information. So, with Lynn's example of the chart using pricing on different promo products, you could do a similar thing and ask it to create, a flow chart for a process, and it will be able to generate that using Show Me. And as far as, thinking about what we're going to start to see more and more of, this Instacart example is a really fascinating one to me. Instacart has a plugin now where, ChatGPT is great at giving recipes. You can ask it to generate a recipe for, lemon bundt cake. If you use this Instacart plugin, it can actually create a shopping list and purchase those so that you can purchase those items directly through Instacart. We talked a little bit about the Edge browser. I definitely recommend, if you're trying to experiment with GPT and large language models, this is another way to use it aside from ChatGPT that's really helpful. If you use the Edge browser and you set this up, essentially you'll get a little sidebar where you've got the chat, the compose, and the insight tabs there. It can actually analyze the text on the page that you're viewing in your browser. You can ask it questions about it. You can ask it to simplify it or reformat it. So on the next slide here, you guys can refer to this when you download the PDF, but essentially I found an article that was, probably 2,000 words explaining how to enable plugins in ChatGPT. I had this up in my browser and I asked it to put it into simple steps for all of you to see in a presentation as quickly as possible. And it analyzed that entire page and came up with these simple 8 steps for how to enable plugins in ChatGPT. Pretty cool. Some specifics about ChatGPT and where they're headed with things. There was some information that got leaked from a private meeting, nothing too devious here, but basically where they're headed with this. They're aiming to make it more affordable and efficient. They are aiming to have it generate images, increase the data capacity it's getting from users, because that's how it continuously improves. They did say that GPT-5 is not going to be millions of times bigger than GPT-4, as was earlier speculated. And one of the things they noted was that a shortage of GPUs, the hardware, is actually kind of right now impacting their ability to scale things.
And I just wanted to jump in and say, bigger isn't always better. What's happening with these the parameters is the internet is just it's like a sewer. It's got a lot of biases. It's got a lot of like scraping text from the internet. So what smart companies are doing, like the really forward-thinking companies that have access to developers in Python and doing all of these things, is they're creating their own version of a large language model using like the Library of Congress, or like access to information, Bloomberg, access to information that they have that they know is credible. So you'll start to see a lot of that moving forward as well.
Just a brief note that in May, the app was released for iOS, so you can actually, if you're an Android user, you can still use it on your phone, obviously, just using your browser. But there is now an app for iPhone. And then again, just some predictions about where things might be headed. As Lynn said, expect to see that companies are going to create similar things for internal use. You can imagine if, you were Microsoft, for example, and all of your support techs could ask ChatGPT information, but be limited just to a database of information about your tools. How useful that, the interactions with customers would become. So you can imagine your company having a similar thing for your sales team, for your customer service team, any number of sets of information, putting that through this same process. That's where things are probably going to be heading. Allowing it to analyze text and information at the same time, that's definitely going to be a game changer. You should expect to start seeing this technology be accessible in more places. Meaning, instead of just going on to ChatGPT, you'll be using, a tool like Photoshop, for example, and you'll see new AI tools right there in the interface. And specifically with OpenAI, they very much expressed a desire to be more responsible and transparent. So we'll see where this goes, but that is definitely something that is on everyone's radar, that it's got to be done responsibly, have to be aware of all the biases and potential privacy and security concerns. This is a quote from Bill Gates, who obviously has seen a lot of changes over the last few decades. And he's essentially comparing it to, he's saying it's as fundamental as the creation of the personal computer, the internet, or the mobile phone. And it's going to change the way we work, the way we travel, the way we learn. So, the age of AI has begun, is basically what he's saying. So it's here and it's big, and it can be scary, So on the next slide, one of the ways that I think it's interesting to think about is, think about it as an engine for your own imagination, right? Cars are faster than humans, but it doesn't mean we stop walking. When we're moving huge amounts of things over long distances, we need engines to do that. This essentially becomes an engine for our own brains to accomplish more.
Go humans.
Yeah. This was a really interesting point that I heard on a podcast. Think about what the impact of photography was on painting. For the longest time, painting was used to capture hyper-realistic images and still life and portraits. All of a sudden, when the camera came out and you could start capturing things more realistically using that, it didn't spell the end of painting, right? It freed artists up to explore so many other things. Impressionism, abstract art, modern art essentially was born from that. So think about that in your day-to-day life. We're not all Picasso here, but AI is going to make us all smarter. Technology has done this for decades. If you think about accountants, when the calculator came out, when Excel came out, when computers have learned to do all this complicated math, did we not need accountants anymore? Absolutely not. We just freed them up from those mundane tasks to focus on the really, really high level things that they're good at and unlock their superpowers. So if you think about this as an engine for your own brain and what you can accomplish in your work, imagine what your superpower is going to be when you no longer have to focus on some of these smaller mundane tasks. And you can focus on things like strategy, creativity, advice, integrating the systems, relationship management, judgment. This is what humans are good at. This is what we enjoy doing. So with that note of optimism, let's get started.
Yes, absolutely. Believe in yourself. We've got this, and don't be scared. Just dive in and test and iterate. And just we're here with you. We're excited. So something that we've done here at Ironmark that we want to recommend that you do, just in terms of next steps, is we have developed, there's a lot of people here who are forward thinking. Part of our core values is we're curious, so, and not afraid. So we have a lot of folks here that just need a platform or an ability to do some research and have some tasks to do and come to the table with some ideas. So we've developed an employee resource group. We encourage you and your team, be the superpower, be the superhero in your organization, and motivate others to get involved and to try and to test and to use this tool. Is there's infinite possibilities. So the only way to you can't do it on your own. So the only way to really truly see its value for your organization is to find people in different departments in your own org and give them a platform, a community to help grow the functionality within your organization. And you'll be surprised what you see. Like, you're here. There are a bunch of people here, I think, from multiple organizations, like that are from the same organization. Go back and set up a meeting and share with them some of the things you learned here, and encourage people to do their research and to, something that really resonated with me in an article I read was that that the tasks that we do are going to be replaced by AI, but the jobs are going to replace people who don't understand these models and these AI tools with people who do. So be the people who do. Be the people who aren't afraid. Be the people who dive in and test.
So something that we've built as well within Ironmark is we have a one-person marketing team LinkedIn community group. So we invite you, please, if you're on this call today and you learned something valuable about ChatGPT, or maybe you're a one-person marketer, maybe your department's downsized this year and you just want support, and leveraging these technologies is a really big key to that, we invite you to join this group. So we will be sending out a follow-up survey, and within that survey there is a question of, would you like to join the group, and the link is attached. From there, we'll be able to grant you access, and we can share this space of support and community learning together. Questions. So we have 3 questions so far in our Q&A panel. Seems like we might have been having some technical difficulties with the actual chat. So there comes another one. Now we're at 4. If you have questions, 5, wow, drop them in the Q&A and we'll start filtering through them. So our first question is from Michelle, and she says, a colleague realtor just posted in an internal group chat that she's been blocked from using ChatGPT. Any ideas why that could happen?
Yeah, what I would suspect it is there are some limitations where if you ask it inappropriate questions or ask it to phrase things in inappropriate ways or violent, and anything violent, it will kind of throw up some warnings and say, basically, ChatGPT is not for this purpose. Just like you'll see with Facebook tagging, words, and it can interpret things wrong. So I guess my suggestion would be either reach out to their support or start a new account. But if that's what's happening, it's probably related to some trigger word showing up.
Or if she's using a VPN, it says that if you're using a VPN, GPT can block your account, or if you have multiple accounts using the free tier. That could also be a few possibilities.
Any of the terms of service, they make the terms of service very clear. So if she, even inadvertently or he violated any of those terms of service, they'll get on top of it.
Amazing. Our next question is from an anonymous attendee, and it says, questions regarding brainstorming. Best practices for brainstorming is to brainstorm separately, then to come together as a group in order to get the widest diversity of ideas, then narrowing down those actionable ideas. With brainstorming generated by a common data set, how big is the variance based on a small prompt change? What is the risk of overlap or being funneled in the same brainstormed list?
I would say quite high. This is, remember, it's math. So small prompt changes, sure, you're going to get a little bit of a different result. But, if you, like, an example I always say is, if almost every email, if you structure your prompt to write an email, ChatGPT is going to start with, "Dear blank, I hope this email finds you well." I mean, try it. It's every time. That's what you get. So that's why you need to kind of, like, the human touch, you need to get in there and edit and come up with some personal responses. In a brainstorming situation, if you give it a common data set, it is likely to come up with the same, like a similar list. But if you, say you have a creative, you have a content writer, you have a strategist, you have a finance person, all coming together, and they all use ChatGPT to, like, develop their first list, have them structure their prompts in a way that brings it from a different perspective, and then you're likely to get, a kind of differing views. But I would say it's not creative. Remember, it's not developing something new. It is developing from the same amounts of massive text and data. So it needs those prompts in order to kind of provide that variance. I hope that's helpful.
All right. Our next question, are there any rules preventing companies from monetizing ChatGPT directly?
I mean, they've opened, John, I don't know, I'll answer like a little bit and then you can get in. I would say, I think a lot of people are using it to monetize, and they've opened up their API. So a lot of software companies, I mean, millions of, they're creating companies around the large language, like with access to the large language model that doesn't necessarily use Chat GPT, but it uses the GPT model itself. So I would say no, but I don't know, for absolute sure, definitely do your research. Don?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's, Chat GPT itself, is that interface, as Lynn said, but the model behind it, there's hundreds of companies, thousands of companies using the technology there.
All right, next question. What do you think of HARPA as a plugin for ChatGPT? That's from Norma Vesti.
Hi, Norma. Good to hear from you. I'm not familiar with HARPA. It's great you're exploring it. I'd be curious how it's working for you.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it either. Thank you for the question, because we'll definitely look into that. Again, very curious over here.
Norma's one of our early adopters on this crew. So
yes.
Nice.
We'll see
well
you
done, Norma.
We'll see you in the LinkedIn
Norma's
group,
going to be
Norma.
our special guest on our next webinar.
Yeah, that is a really great topic to bring to the LinkedIn community if that's something you're comfortable joining, because I'm sure, this is a conversation a lot of people want to continue. We have a few more questions to get through. Luke Peterson wants to know, what are the benefits of ChatGPT Premium?
Plugins is the big one. With the Premium, you can use that. There's also no limit on using it during high volume times. If you have a free account and you're using it during a time when a lot of other people are using it, you might not be able to access it. Those are the big ones. Lynn, am I missing any?
No, yeah, it's the downtime and the plugins is the biggest thing. And the downtime was a lot worse earlier, so that's where they got a lot of people.
All right, and then Luke has a follow-up question. Thoughts on Google Search's Generative Experience, SGE?
I have not tested this yet. I think there's a lot of, it's Google. I think there's a lot of promise in Google joining the AI party, though a little bit behind some of the others. They have invested an incredible amount in artificial intelligence over the past decade. So I'm excited to see what that tool brings, but I haven't experimented with that myself. How about you, Don?
No, I haven't experimented much with it. The one thing I would say about Google is, we know how these tools work, and it's based on how much information they have, and nobody has more information than Google. So I think Google is, a little bit floundering right now, but I expect them to, just continue to adapt, evolve, and probably find a way to reclaim that highest share on, whatever it is that's replacing search, because the experience for a lot of what we're looking for here when we're asking these questions, the Chat GPT model is just, it works better for finding answers than, the old school search engine approach. Not for everything, but for a good amount of these questions.
Mm-hmm. So it is 12 o'clock. We do have 3 more questions. So I'm game to stay on and get them all answered if you guys are. Beautiful. So an anonymous attendee
If
says,
you do have to, sorry, if you do have to jump off, join us on LinkedIn. There was a question about the LinkedIn group. I've sent the link there to join. So we'll be sparking up some conversation over the next couple of days about this topic. So thank you so much.
yep. An anonymous attendee says, I currently only use ChatGPT on my phone. Can you share some background about the functionality differences between the iPhone and the computer?
Well, I just prefer to type personally. I haven't noticed any difference in the quality of answers if I give it a great prompt, but I will say this. For me, typing a really awesome prompt on my phone is not as easy as leveraging my prompt library and leveraging like pieces of text and information that I could use to make my prompts more valuable. So that's what I'll say. If I need a quick like letter to my kid's coach, or like a quick thing, I'll use it on my phone. But if I'm working it through, if I'm leveraging it for work or business, or I really need a helpful answer, I'll just simply for functionality purposes, I'll just use it on my, where I have access to most of my information, which is on my computer. How about you, Don? Have you noticed a difference in quality of answers?
I am team Android, so no, I haven't.
Oh, right. Shame.
The green bubble. This next question is going to be about text-generated images. What are the copyrights and legal issues, especially for images? What about citations and sources?
Good one, Lisa. These are all really good questions. And I think the legal community is up in arms. I mean, when you have a system as powerful as, systems that are as powerful as what we've got here, it is, and you have the CEO of the main company going to Congress begging for laws and, begging lawmakers to get on regulation. It's up in the air right now. Don, do you know something I don't know? I think these are really good questions that are
well, I think pointing, you commented on images specifically here that the question did. I think that's where we're going to see the biggest copyright issues start to come up. For all intents and purposes right now, it's as if whatever these tools are generating is brand new and has never been, isn't sampling something else. But in reality, particularly with the images, it is sampling other things. And the chain of where it's sampled that way back down the line is very convoluted. But, you can see that there are artists who their work was used to train these models. And at some point that might become a legal issue where the fact that it was used to train that, if they can prove it and show it and say that these images that were generated, that could become a copyright issue. Right now, as far as I know, obviously I'm not a lawyer, but the images that are created are new images. But I would expect that there's going to be some regulations coming down from this, particularly with images.
Definitely.
Beautiful. And then last question from an anonymous attendee says, your breakdown of how to write a prompt was very helpful. I wanted to do a deeper dive on prompt engineering. What resources can you recommend?
Good. I'm glad it was helpful. We're going to be sending out the deck where you'll actually get the breakdown and you can leverage it. What I would say is there's going to be a lot of, if you like YouTube, get on YouTube or I can't recommend any of those sources right now. What I will tell you is you are your own superpower. So take the prompts the prompt structure that we went through today and test and tweak and try different things. This puts you in the role of software developer. So these models are software and you are developing the code. Your prompts are your code. So you have to figure out what is going to generate the best. So my best answer is, because there's so much junk out there about everybody's jumping on prompt engineering and you better do it this way or you better do it that way. The best way is just to get the tool out, get a structure that like we shared today, and just start testing and then save your work. Like use those histories, and when you get something that you like, save it and create that library.
Another great resource is that we also have a blog that will be getting posted in the coming weeks that is exactly about prompt engineering and how to successfully engineer a prompt for different problems you may have. So keep an eye out, and we have a subscription to our blogs as well that you can join if you want it to get delivered straight to your inbox. Now, we do have one last question that just trickled in if we want to finish it off strong. It's from Rebecca Dexter.
I love this one. This is a great one, Rebecca.
I do the meeting minutes for board meetings, and normally I record it and listen back later to create clean and easy read minutes. If I change to transcript, would ChatGPT be able to create my minutes?
Yes. Rebecca, you're in luck. This is one of our favorite uses for the tool. Transcripts with lots of ums and ahs and things that you don't want. What I'll tell you is we do this a lot is tell it what, give it some information in the beginning, who's attended the meeting, what the purpose of the meeting is, where the meeting was, the date, and then just plop that transcript in. And you can even tell it like, create the meeting minutes in this kind of structure. I want action items separate. I want pull out, things that people said that they promised they would do, major decisions. And it is probably one of the best use cases for this tool. I saw, Don, your eyes light up as well. We still have a bunch of attendees on here, so thank you for staying. Anything else on that piece, Don?
No, I mean, give it a shot and think like, one of the things we use it for exactly that purpose, but then we obviously are reviewing the notes ourselves. Right. Get somebody else's feedback on it to make sure you didn't miss anything that you documented. But it's a great use case.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And thanks for even staying longer. We love talking about this topic. We'll send out the deck, and Don and my contact information are there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us directly or connect with us on LinkedIn, and definitely join our group. We'd love to continue the conversation. Have a great afternoon, everyone.